Hi, I'm Vicky from Rockstars and Royalty. Welcome back to my channel. In this series of videos, I'm going to be showing you how I make this dress. And the first thing I need to do is make the petticoat to go underneath it. When I'm making gowns, I rarely make my petticoats because you can buy them, but you can't always buy the exact length or colour that you need. So I do often alter petticoats so they're exactly the right shape or size or length to go under the gown that I'm making. I want to use a T-length fluffy petticoat under the tulle skirt to go with this dress. But it's really hard to find them in longer lengths, longer than knee length. I'm actually going to use 3 of these, which are from the brand Hell Bunny. So each of these has 2 layers. So I'll have 6 layers all up that I can cut and rejoin to make my longer petticoat. I'm going to keep the top part and cut this part off, add the extra length and then reattach these at the bottom. The first thing I'm going to do is cut the bottoms off all 3 of the petticoats. So I'm going to cut just below where the satin finishes so that I end up with 6 separate circles of the neck part. So now I've got 2 pieces that look like this and are really, really, really long. That's 1 layer, and the second layer. That's what the top looks like once you've cut all the ruffles off. So I'm actually going to use the 2 layers, it's easy to get between them. And I'm going to attach 1 layer to the inside and 1 to the outside as I lengthen it and make the long petticoat. I'm going to go ahead and do exactly the same with the other 2 petticoats and then I'll be back to show you the next step. Okay, so I've got my 6 piles of ruffles that I've cut from the petticoat. I've got the top of 1 of them that I'm going to reattach it all to, and then to lengthen it I've got this white satin. I was looking for a white mesh to lengthen it with, but everything that I found was either too stiff or it was just tulle and it wasn't going to be strong enough, so I've decided to use a satin instead. So next I need to work out the extra length I need to add to bring it from here down to the top of where I need the first layer of the net to start. And then I'm going to cut a full circle because I want this petticoat to really be spinny and just really full and have lots of movement to it. So I'm going to cut a circle with a hole in the middle. The hole in the middle will match the circumference at the bottom of this. And then the length, so from where the hole in the middle is cut to the edge of the circle, will be the extra length that I need to add. So I will, once I've worked it out and cut it, I will show you what my measurements are, but your measurements will vary depending on what size the top of the petticoat that you're using is, and depending on how deep your ruffles are, and depending on what your finished length is. I'm only going to cut 1 circle at this time, because the outside layer will have further to go, because the inside layer is like that, the outside will be like that. If I cut it the same length, we'll end up with a hem that curves up at the outside edges. You know, sometimes when you see really full petticoats and dresses, they just do that curve up at the side. So I'm going to cut 1 layer and then measure again, and I'm going to have to cut the circle for the outside layer just that little bit longer, just so we can get a nice even hem on the petticoat. I want it to be really straight across the bottom. I don't want that curve up at the side. The other 2 waistbands that I've cut off, I'm actually going to keep because they're useful to have to alter or add to other petticoats as I change them in the future. So even though they're offcuts today, they'll go in my stash and get used for something down the track one day. I've worked out that I want my finished petticoat length to be 34 inches. So I've measured the top part that we've just cut off the petticoats, and that's 6 inches deep. The ruffles are 14 inches deep, so I need the satin to be 14 inches, and that makes a total of our 34 inches length. So the 6 and the 14 are the complete width that I've got, so that'll actually be 13.5 and 5.5 by the time I've attached the satin, once we take the seam allowance off. So I need to add a full inch either side of seam allowance to get my 34 inches. And I've measured around the bottom of this part of the petticoat, and the circumference is 55 inches. So I need to cut a circle of satin that's got a 55-inch circumference hole in the middle, and it is 16 inches wide all the way around the edge. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out, and then I'm going to hang it up and let it drop. Because we're cutting a full circle and not seaming it, all the parts on the bias are going to want to drop. And if I stitch the ruffles on now, by the time it's hung up and dropped, we're going to end up with bits that are longer than other parts. So I folded it in half, right sides together, selvage to selvage, and then I folded it in half lengthways as well. So I've ended up with 4 layers all together here. Then I can measure my circle from the corner here. So the hole I need to cut in the middle needs to be 55 inches in circumference. So through a trial and error, I've worked out my line that is a quarter of that, which is 13.75 inches. And now I'm going to measure 16 inches down from that all the way around. And then when I cut around there and cut around there, that will give me my full circle. Once I've cut it, I'm going to hang it overnight and let it drop. Next, I'm going to join the right side of the satin to the right side of the lining layer of the top of the petticoat. Once it's all pinned, I'll then overlock it into place. So I put my petticoat back onto my mannequin, and I just checked that this circle of satin hadn't dropped at all, and it hadn't, so I didn't need to even that up. So now I've popped it on the floor, and I've got the right side of the lining facing upwards, so I've got the satin side up. I've divided the circumference into thirds and marked it, and then I've marked each of those thirds in half as well. And now I'm gathering one of the ruffles onto each third of this petticoat. So I'm actually gathering them by hand. You could gather them using a gathering foot on your machine if you want, but I find that this fabric's just too fine to go through my gathering foot for some reason, so I'm doing it like this instead. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting each section open. I haven't joined them together. I'll do that at the end. It would have just been too complicated to try and get them joined without a twist in, so I might not even need to join them by the time they hang down, so we'll see. Now I'm going to cut down the seam of the next ruffle that we cut off the original petticoats, pin each end to the 1/3 mark of my satin and pin halfway along here. Then I'm going to gather it and pin it on here. I'm going to do that with all 3 pieces, and once they're on, I'm going to overlock the edge to hold them onto the satin. So this is how the petticoat is looking with the first layer of the net attached to it. So you can see it's super full because we've got that complete circle, so it's going to be beautiful swirly petticoat. Next I'm going to measure how long I need to make the top layer to make sure it sits level with this layer and doesn't curve up at the side. So it's about 2 inches longer. So I'm now going to do exactly the same process again. I'm going to cut my circle, but I'm going to cut it 2 inches longer than the first circle that we cut. I'm going to gather all the net onto it, and then this time I'm going to join it right sides together on the outside layer of the top of the petticoat. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'll be back to show you the finished petticoat. So this is my finished petticoat. It's super full, it's super fluffy, and it's just huge. It's absolutely huge, and it's perfect to go under the big tulle skirt that's going to go over it for this dress that I'm making, and I'll be back to show you how I make the tulle skirt in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the little bell so that you get notified when I upload new videos. Leave me a like, leave me a comment and tell me what you think of my petticoat, and I'll be back soon with the next video.